Steve Millington is in the studio with us. He is the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX at newsradio1310.com. I just wanted to remind you, we have some people here in town who have been working hard to help you plan for your future. Waddell and Reed, located right in Twin Falls. This is a firm that's been in business now since 1937. One of the oldest firms in the country offering mutual funds. In fact, Waddell and Reed manages and owns two mutual fund families. These are people, you ask, do they know what they're doing? Well, of course, 80 years in business. You don't get 8 months if you don't know what you're doing, but 80 years, that's an incredible, incredible run. They're going to help you build proper expectations. At Waddell and Reed, they understand that they have to build plans around your needs and your goals, each and every one of you being an individual. Waddell and Reed will help manage money, and at Waddell and Reed, they take the planning personally. 8:35 right now. I got to play something for you, Steve, very quickly here because the first 100 days of the Trump administration, as if somehow 100 days, this arbitrary figure that's assigned, but Chuck Schumer, who's, I guess, the most macho of minority leaders in the U.S. Senate in history, wanted to weigh in on this and take a listen.
The president has spent the first 100 days governing from the far right on behalf of the powerful and the special interests he once campaigned against.
Read the card, Chuck, just the typical old card that they've been using for 40, 50, 60 years. And repeat it, and you figure if you repeat it long enough that other people go, oh, okay, it must be true.
Everybody will begin to believe it. And that's probably not quite accurate. And you know, one of the things in this Politico article was that they just keep pounding the same storyline over and over and over in hopes that somebody out there will begin to believe it. And Politico says, hey, wait a minute, that's not the case anymore. You missed the election of Trump completely. It just overwhelmed you. Now you're not sure how to respond to it. Well, the response is, hey, this cannot happen. We've got to shut this off. We've got to destroy this man. We cannot allow this to continue. And yet you look at it and you say to yourself, get a grip, people. The primary constituency that you serve is the far East Coast from Boston to Washington, D.C., and the far West Coast with a little pocket in Seattle, a little pocket in Portland, Oregon, and then from San Francisco down to Los Angeles.
But it's the only people they know, and see, that's the thing. They don't know people who think otherwise.
They make the comment in their article that these people will once in a while, their words not mine, parachute into the Midland, and wander around for a day or two, and then have the helicopter extract them and take them back to their safety of their bubble. And so they never really get to know the people out in the hinterland, so to speak. And the writer of this Politico article said that's not going to change. But it had better, or the media is going to discover that they have lost it.
They come into a diner. They stick in Nebraska, for instance, they stick a microphone in somebody's face. Somebody just tells them what they want to hear to get out of there, and then they say, "This is what the people of Nebraska believe," which obviously voting records don't prove that.
Doesn't hardly reflect that, does it?
Betsy Russell had a piece the other day about the comments that the state government has been getting here in Idaho on teaching climate change in schools. And says, oh, you know, the comments have been overwhelmingly from liberals. Well, why wouldn't they be? Because conservatives are off doing other things, and conservatives are happy with the status quo with this. But it gave you the impression in the headline in the Spokesman Review that somehow that there was an overwhelming groundswell of support for this. Then how come they only have 15% of the offices in the state?
And how come it is that when they go to, I wonder how many different diners they had to go to, or how many different points of reference they had to go to find the, quote, overwhelming majority, unquote. They're going to, you're going to ask the questions to lend credence to your position.
You went to the Democrat Party meeting in Coeur d'Alene. That's what they did.
Yeah. Or they may have gone to the Democrat Party meeting in Blaine County, or there's one in Bannock County in Pocatello, and every once in a while they get together in Boise. and and so they're going to go to those locations where they can hear what they want to hear. And one of the difficult things, and I'm guilty as well as anybody else, but when I have my choices of internet news that I look at almost every day, some people will say that that's all I do every day. But I look at them. I've got two or three websites out there that it takes a lot of self control to go read them because they don't say what I want to read or hear. And yet I try to read them just to make sure that I'm not living in my own self imposed bubble. So, and that, you gotta, it takes a lot of willpower to go do that because it's not comfortable and it's not really much fun. But that's where we're going to be in trouble if we don't begin to expand that horizon. We're going to be locked in a bubble.
We've got more coming up with Steve Millington. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. He may also have a comment or two coming up, just some details on a little get-together going on with one of our neighboring county committees. Just a few minutes. It's 8:40. Bill Colley with you, too, as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Our studio guest is Steve Millington. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Just a quick note, I wanted to mention, yes, it still feels like winter out there, and there is some talk of some snow this week. I know we're going to banish that word, we hope, in May.
You haven't lived in Idaho very long, have you, Bill?
I'm going to tell you, the beginning of next week looks a lot like this week, but we're told by Thursday of next week we might see a breakout. Just a quick note for those people who are thinking about things are going to dry out. If you're thinking about building your dream home, I'd like to recommend the folks at Western Visions Inc. because Russell Smith, the founder of Western Visions Inc., he has been not only renovating historic homes and properties, he has been building beautiful homes from scratch, you might want to say, from the ground up for the last 20 to 30 years. And he's been actively involved in all of this. And I wanted to mention as well, he will work with you from beginning to end and in between. In other words, you don't sign a contract and not see him for 90 days to 180 days. He will work with you all along the project to make sure that everything is up to your specs. And he uses only high-end craftsmen in his work. And frankly, if you signed up with them right now and broke ground shortly, you could be in that house, most likely, long before the end of summer and sitting out there on the deck enjoying some of that really hot weather that will be on the way. We recommend you go to the website, western-visions.com. That's western-visions.com. As I mentioned, Steve Millington is our studio guest. Steve, you have a telephone caller.
Oh, good.
We may go to the telephones and see who we have here. You're up next. You're on the air.
Good morning.
Quickly about your statement about, April and it's still snowing. You know how hard it rained yesterday, especially in eastern Idaho, and our drainage is from Jackson Hole area, and I guarantee you that it put down some snow. The amount of snow in these mountains is so unbelievably high that we're so far from being out of the woods with this snowpack and the drainage. And, we think we're getting through here somehow. I tell you what, man, I don't know that this could become disastrous.
Well, I'll add too, we should point out, I haven't mentioned it yet, weather is a service of Mountain Home Auto Ranch, which I like to call the candy store for grown-ups. Because I drove by it the other Saturday, and you just see that line of pickup trucks, and you go, ooh, and I want that one.
Candy store for grown-ups. Okay, you win. And
yeah.
our caller makes a very good point. I was out to Salmon Dam by Rogerson, and the levels of water in there, and at the same time, I'm sitting the roadway that goes over the dam itself is basically a single lane road. You sure don't want to meet another vehicle on that thing. It's just not a comfortable situation. But as we drove across there, and I stopped for just a minute, there was nobody around. I checked my rearview mirror, and I checked out the front window, and I looked out across the horizon to the mountains to the south of us out there, and I thought to myself, those things are still completely white on top.
Yeah.
There's a lot of water yet to come. They're going to have to spill some water out of there to keep that thing. And I think we could be facing the same situation everywhere.
Well,
In this morning, excuse me, I'll just walk on you one more time. In this
it's your
morning's,
time, but I'm just going to point out we
in
can
this,
talk weather for the rest of the half
no,
hour
no,
if you like. But
well, in this morning's Idaho Statesman, they had pictures of the quote rooster tail coming out of Anderson Dam where they're spilling the water.
I was there Saturday morning.
And it's just phenomenal. And actually, our Shoshone Falls is still spilling tremendous amounts of water. It's beautiful to go watch because it's kind of controlled. It would be real ugly if it gets worse and gets out of control.
All I will say to that is that for some of us, if you get up really early in the morning, you can get there before the crowd gets there.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh,
which is
man.
exactly what I did Saturday morning, along with some Japanese tourists I got to chat with. We wanted to mention a big event coming up this weekend, Saturday morning.
Saturday morning, Lincoln, Jerome County has their Lincoln Day banquet. Now, most counties in the state of Idaho have their Lincoln Day banquet during February, close to the Lincoln Day.
But if you don't want to compete,
but Jerome has moved theirs back after
which
the
isn't to say
legislative.
they are competitive people. But
Yep. They've moved theirs back after the legislative session so that they can have most of the legislators come and attend. And they always give them just a minute or two to talk about the legislative session and not lengthy, not in depth. So this year, the Jerome Lincoln County Days will be Saturday morning, the 29th. Have I got the right date there?
yeah, I think so.
I think it's the 29th. Okay. And it'll be held at the barn just on Highway 93 north and using the Jerome coordinates, it's 300 south.
I called it the wedding barn. That's how I think a lot of people know it.
As you go north up Highway 93, there's the big old rock barn right along the edge of the road right there. And I think it's just after you cross the railroad tracks. And that's where they're going to have it, is in that facility. Breakfast starts at 9, and then the programs will start about 10. And they always have a very nice, the breakfast, well, in the past they've had it over catered by the Senior Citizen Center. It'll be interesting to see what they have this year. But in the past, man, they put on a nice breakfast. Hash browns and some pork, some bacon or ham, and some eggs, and just phenomenal, big, nice breakfast.
We'll see a lot of candidates, even for statewide office, this time around.
I think we're going to have a lot of announced candidates showing up in Jerome on Saturday morning. I'm not going to, but I know at least 3 that are going to be there, and I am very suspicious that there'll be a 4th one there. We could also see a couple, maybe a 5th and 6th one. We could see and this is primarily in the races for lieutenant governor and governor races. We could see a lot of personalities
and
show
we still
up.
don't know, because there's a neighboring congressman who's also fluent in Spanish, but he hasn't made any announcements yet.
No, he hasn't. And at this stage of the game, I would be really surprised if the congressman from the 1st Congressional District
he's supposed to be on the show with us tomorrow, so maybe we'll get a chance to ask him when.
I should be careful. Now, kudos to Labrador, okay? He had 2 town hall meetings, one in Meridian and one in Nampa, and both of them were extremely well attended. Huge populations at both events, and the Meridian one lasted about 3 hours, and he stood right there and took the heat for 3 solid hours. The Nampa one was Meridian. They estimate about 800 people. I don't know how they do that, but the Nampa one didn't have the 800 people, but was still very well attended. And at Nampa, he would get down off the stage a little bit and just kind of walk. But he did a super job. And where is our congressman from our 2nd congressional district?
He doesn't like to do town halls.
He doesn't like to do town halls, and so therefore we don't get a chance to see him in that kind of a situation.
We wanted to point out, since just briefly we're on the topic of state government and just state politics, the lawsuit filed last week. Brian Zollinger was on the show with us explaining how this works, and surprisingly, he picked up, there's another 29 sponsors, 24 from the House, 6 from the state
Senate.
Senate. The number I was thought impressively large. I've also talked to some members, too, of our local delegation, even though they didn't get on board with a lawsuit. Some of them tell me they think it has a good chance of actually winning.
And I have heard both sides of that
This is
argument.
on the grocery tax
The
repeal
grocery
veto.
tax repeal. Governor Otter vetoed that. The challenge is the Constitution says it has to be 10 days, and beginning when? And that's the issue. When does the 10-day time period begin? Um, these legislators are making the argument that it begins the day the legislature adjourns. And the Supreme Court, in a previous ruling in 78, said no, it begins when the bill lands on the governor's desk. So, Governor Otter, on recommendation of legal counsel and the Attorney General and the Secretary of State, used the date it lands on the governor's desk. So that the question in the lawsuit is, which one of those two time periods is correct? Now, they would like to, the legislators would like to see this thing overturned judiciously by the judicial branch. And by the way, anytime we go to the judiciary to make laws, that's the worst possible arrangement on earth. They never get it right. Just leave it alone. It really doesn't take effect, is not implemented until 18. So legislature, get together in January of 18. The first bill that comes off the table is the repeal of the grocery tax credit. And you get it through the House and through the Senate and on the governor's desk. And while the legislature is in session, there is a 5-day window, not a 10-day window. So the governor would have to act on it within a 5-day period. Even if he vetoed it, it could come right back to the legislature, which would still be in session. They could override his veto and the deal would be over. So I have a little bit of heartburn from the standpoint of, oh yeah, we all want to sue everybody about everything and make our statement in the courts. I'm sorry, but the courts get it wrong more often than they get it right. Stay out of the courts. Let's use the regular process that is available for us to use. They can get this thing passed on the 15th of January. It'll be on his desk, and he has to answer by the 20th of January. If he vetoes it, they can have it back on the floor on the 21st of January, and it's a done deal.
We've got about 4 to 5 minutes left.
Is that all?
I know there's at least one or two other things you wanted to mention as well this morning.
One of the things, I'm so hung up in these other things. I forgot. One of the things when you had Brian Zollinger on last week, he's putting together this
Freedom Caucus.
Freedom Caucus, kind of a loosely knit but ideologically cohesive group of legislators, and he used a term that they do not intend to be disruptive of the legislative process, but by its very nature, it disrupts the flow through the legislate. Now, I'm not a big fan of quite so much protocol and institutional cramming. Why can't we just get things done? Well, because we have rules and procedures, and in many, many ways, it is a more comfortable arrangement to have an orderly process through the legislative agenda. So work with it, make your voice heard, and you'll get more mileage than being disruptive. And so now I visited with a analyst. He's not a member of the legislature, and he's not a lobbyist. He just looks and watches, and his comment is, we now have three political parties in the Idaho legislature. We have the Democrats, and there's not very many of them. And we have the Republicans, and there's a lot of them. And then we have the splinter Republicans, and that's the one that's growing. And the splinter Republicans is the one that could actually cause the most disruption in the legislative process. The Democrats have figured out that to get along, they have to go along. And so, unless it's something completely wacko, the Democrats begrudgingly are not going to make too much waves. They're going to make their case and sing their song, but at the end of the program, they're basically going to say, "Okay, we'll let it go."
And both the leaders from both houses, minority leaders, were on the show with me in the last few weeks, and both said
Erpling and Stennett both.
they both pretty much said, we just feel we have to get a message out, but we're not going to do a lot of grandstanding.
And that will benefit them more than what these other guys are doing with this. And I grandstanding is a good term. I think to a large extent these people are simply grandstanding a cause. Not that it doesn't have some validity in some areas and in some means. However, it becomes disruptive, and I keep reminding Republicans all over the state, anybody who will listen, Republicans are not the enemy. The Democrats are the enemy. Now quit killing each other. It's like we belong to a circular firing squad. And when they say ready, aim, fire, we shoot another Republican. And that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. We will pay the price for this if the Democrats gain a considerable growth in their representation. At that point in time, people are going to say, I'm sick and tired of the Republicans. All they do is want to fight each other. I'm going to go a different direction. People, the enemy is not the Republicans. And it's not even the Republican organizations, although sometimes it just makes you want to jump off a bridge. The enemy is the Democrats.
We're going to see you here Friday with Tommy Alquist, right?
Yep.
Are you coming in as well?
Friday morning at 8:30 again. Yep, Friday morning we'll have Tommy Alquist.
He's a candidate for governor here in Idaho on the Republican side, one of only 478.
Yeah, it gets bigger every day.
We have a short break for news from Fox, and one more hour of Top Story is just ahead.